welcome back to the Awesome Friday Games podcast. My name's Simon, and each week I take a close look at a few games that are taking up all my time. And I do my best to try and put into words why they've grabbed me and why they're filling my very, very short gaming time. Just a reminder before we start that Awesome Friday is fully independent. We're completely supported by ads and donations. And so if you enjoyed this podcast or the movie podcast I record with Matt, who's the other half of the site, then please consider donating to our Ko-fi or Patreon, or just write a review, recommend us to your friends. That's really, really useful to us as well. Any engagement is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for listening. And this week we're going to talk about a few games that have completely taken over my life in the last couple of months. And I can't wait to get into them. So here we go. Okay, so the first game I'm talking about this week is a game that's still in early access on Steam, but I absolutely adore it. I've already put about 30-something hours into it, and it's called Flight of Nova. And I'm not sure what Nova is, but basically it's a space flight simulator that emulates a full planet below you. So you are in one of two spaceships at the moment, and you can either start in an orbital base or you can go down to a land base and do some basic missions. And the missions are go here and fetch this and bring this here, or go find this missing object. So at this point there isn't much more to it than that. But the missions are a tiny, tiny part of what I've been doing with this game, because the key thing here is that it has realistic gravitation, orbital physics, atmospheric density, data, density and drag, and it somehow finds that sweet spot between being accurate and fun. Because I play a lot of space games, they're one of my favorite genres, and I've been having trouble finding a game that finds that balance enough for me. I keep trying No Man's Sky. I've tried it many, many times now. I actually bought it on release, and I've been following it as Hello Games have been doing a fantastic job in updating it for free. I mean, they've really transformed it into something that I don't think anyone could have expected the game that it's become at the beginning. They've really met all those very lofty ambitions at the beginning, and even definitely exceeded them in many cases. And the big draw with No Man's Sky is that you can fly to space directly down to the planet and back out to space again. And that's really, really fun. But I've never felt like I'm in total control of the craft. The landing on the planet is completely automated. The transition from planet to space has this very convenient thick cloud layer that sort of separates these two biomes, if you like. And I found the gameplay of No Man's Sky, it's very, very complex and very, very good and in-depth, but it's not something I have time for. I'm really not interested in mining, gathering resources. Even the creative mode, I find, has too many walls in the way for my enjoyment. So I've tried also Elite Dangerous, which I enjoy up to a point, but I, again, because my gaming time is so limited, I have very little opportunity to really get stuck into systems, and Elite Dangerous is so intent on adhering to its complex systems. I enjoy much of it, but it became too complicated for me. And really, the space game I'm trying to capture is a game from the PS2 called Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter, which it's a first-person shooter primarily, and it's perfectly adequate. I mean, it's a very typical PS2 themed sci-fi shooter at the time where it was very, very popular. But the key draw with Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter is that you had a little spaceship that you unlock after the first couple of missions. And you can fly this thing to space stations and then fly inside or wherever you need to go and land and actually get out of the spaceship. You can even stand up and walk around your spaceship and look through different windows as it's coming into dock or flying past these objects in space. And I've never found a space game that has that same sense of immersion that you can actually walk around your ship, pilot it. There's been a few games that have tried to get that, but again, the complication factor stops the fun factor, and I think that balance is really, really important. So I've always been on the lookout for something that would fill that niche for me. And Flight of Nova, even though at the moment you can't get out of your ship and you can't walk around your ship, there is a first-person view that you can look around. But the thing with Flight of Nova is that the planet is an object, like a real-time object in front of you. And to go down to this planet, you have to control your thrust and boost. And as I found out the hard way, if you go too fast through a thick atmosphere, really bad things happen to your spaceship. Like very bad things. So it's been really exhilarating to kind of learn these rules and actually do research on real life space travel, like rules, to try and work out how to not die. I played a lot of Kerbal Space Program, and I have killed a lot of Kerbals. So dying in space is one of my specialities. But really that exhilaration when I learned about reducing thrust to a certain level through trial and error, how fast or how slow I could go through the atmosphere, and actually going from space down to the planet is an incredibly evocative and fascinating journey that feels real. There's no kind of break between space and the ground. There's no loading layer, if you like. And I haven't quite worked out how to go from land up to space yet, because of course to redock in space you have to do that typical Kerbal thing of matching altitude, matching speed, slowly getting closer to this object and then docking with it. There's a training mission where you have to catch up with a space station and dock with it, and I managed it for the first time yesterday after watching a few videos, and it just felt amazing. And there's so little, I hate to use the word content, there's so little content in this game, but it's the kind of game that makes you imagine and create your own stories over and over again. And if I find myself with a spare 30 minutes for gaming, because that's really all I have these days with 2 kids and jobs and blah, 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 then more often than not, I will fire up my PC and I will start in free mode in space and just land and try and make it to a base. Because the scale is so big, sometimes you don't have enough fuel to get to a base. So to be able to fly from space and then land and refuel is amazing. It's an absolutely amazing feeling. Recently I had some dental work done, and I'm not a big fan of the dentist. So they prescribed me an Ativan, which was my first time taking something like that. And it doesn't quite knock you out, but it kind of makes you kind of care less about the things that you were caring about before. And my wife brought me back from the dentist appointment, and I don't really remember getting to this point, but I came to my games room and I put on the amazing soundtrack to No Man's Sky by 65 Days of Static. I put that on through my sound system extremely loud and fired up Flight of Nova, which has a perfectly good atmospheric soundtrack itself. But I basically finished my couple of hours long trip, if you like, on Ativan, flying from space down to the planet with the soundtrack of No Man's Sky blasting loud. And I think that really sums up like the place it has in my subconscious at the moment, because there are some missions, like I say, all the missions at the moment are based on the bases. So you're flying between bases, like carrying like water containers. So your main ship is like the scout ship, single seat scout ship with like a belly loader for single crates, or you can swap out for this really cool like cargo ship. And so you can either fly between places or look for missing robots in the desert. And the planet's really, really interesting because it's kind of a Mars-ish, very rocky, lots of crevasses and interesting places to fly around. And it is early access, so the textures are still being built. One of the most recent updates was adding textures, and suddenly we have lakes now. And I think that's, as a console player, really, for the majority of my life, being part of an early access game and seeing it grow in front of you, like through tiny increments, is really exciting. Especially as I don't read the devlog, so going down and seeing a lake of lava for the first time was just amazing. And the feeling of exploration, even though there's no one else, there's no NPCs, there's no other ships that you see, the science fiction that you create in your head around these stories is incredible. And the first pictures from the James Webb Telescope this week really kind of hit the same note for me. Like, as soon as I saw those pictures, which are amazing, by the way, like the most detailed and in-depth pictures of the earliest universe that we've ever seen in the highest detail. Mind-blowing amount of galaxy clusters in what looks like empty space. It's just, we are so tiny and so small. And when I was very, very young, my absolute dream was to just journey into space, be an astronaut and explore. And sometimes I get very, very sad about what we could do to explore that if we as a race were just able to agree on any damn thing at any time. But that's another thing entirely. So these photos really almost made me run to fire up Flight of Nova. And it's even more impressive that it's all the work of one dev. Like, the company is called Aerovery Lab, but it I think it's this one guy from Switzerland called David Lloyd, who made a helicopter sim and then followed his love for space sims as well. And it just finds that perfect balance between control and complication and like authenticity, but also fun in a way that like Spaceship Engineers is also a great fun game, but it takes so long to get anywhere in that game because it is so authentic in its sort of depth of space. And what Flight of Nova does is just give you that enough of the sci-fi with its realism. And I am just unbelievably excited about where this game could go in the next few years. There's talk of adding hostile bases, there's talk of adding more missions, of course, more ships, maybe even different planets to visit. And I'm not the kind of gamer that spends multiple, like tens of hours with a game anymore. I'll either finish it and move on, or I'll dump it. So for something to capture me for this long, and I'm, like I said, I think I'm 33 hours in now, just playing in fits and starts, but still gives me something every time I fire it up, gives me the story that I create for myself, is amazing. And I can't wait to see where it goes. I'm incredibly excited to be part of that journey. So very, very highly recommended if you're like me, if you're a 40-something guy who's had dreams of science fiction space and being a spaceship pilot. I really, really recommend Flight of Nova on Steam. And our second game that we're talking about this week is something I've just finished on my Meta Quest 2. It's basically the untethered VR headset that Facebook sells, that is soon actually going to be detached from Facebook finally, so you can have your own Meta account without it being a Facebook account, which is, of course, good news. The more you can distance yourself from Facebook, the better. And this game I've played is actually a game I have played for years and years and years and years. In fact, I played the demo of this game when it was first released on my first gaming PC. I had an Alienware laptop, and I played I think it was like a tech demo. It was a free tech demo. And the game is Superhot. And if you've played Superhot, then yeah, you'll know that it's a first-person game. And the key, the thing with this game is that time only moves when you do. So the world is basically like this Mirror's Edge combat arena. It's white bleached environments and highly vectored, almost glassy red enemies. And you have to survive. And there's lots of guns and lots of punching and knives and various different weapons. And everything is completely still until you move. So it's almost like a puzzle as you plan your movements. And the cool thing is that it's clearly highly inspired by the Matrix, but it's still cool. When they fire at you, the bullets leave these long red streaks and you can kind of arc your body sideways. And so as you pick up a gun and you plan your shots and you plan your movements to kill all the people in the room, and there's never been a better John Wick simulator anyway. As soon as this game came out, I bought it, I think from PS4 at first, and finished it, and then rebought it on another platform and finished it. They also released a really cool roguelike version called Mind Control Delete, which is like a waves mode or roguelike mode. But it wasn't until I rebought it, I think for the third time, and on my quest, that I really kind of saw it again as a brand new game. And that's the thing with VR. Some games, when you put them into VR, feel like they were that way all along. And just playing it in 2D was just a compromise. So when you play with a normal controller, obviously your controller controls your movements. And so everything is about what your hands are doing. But as soon as you put the VR headset on, you're in that world. And if you've got a space that's big enough to do this room scale, you can just walk around these small rooms, these environments. And suddenly your entire body controls time. So it's not just the thumbs and fingers anymore. It's the movements of your hands and your head and your neck and the rotation of your head as you look around. And suddenly you're in this incredibly evocative kind of environment with these people trying to attack you. And honestly, I first played this on VR, on PSVR actually, years and years ago. And I actually stopped playing it because it was too stressful when I was being shot. When a bullet that you've missed gets through your defenses and hits you, I defy you not to have a physical reaction to that, like you're being shot. And actually, like I said, the first time I played it, I couldn't really deal with that. There's something that has changed though on Oculus. I don't know if it's because it's untethered. And honestly, as much as I really hate Facebook, untethered VR is an absolute game changer. If you've only been used to like tethered VR as I was before getting this, it completely changes everything. And there's no better example of this than Superhot, because it gives you that freedom to move slowly. So you don't need a massive space. You don't even really need to do it room scale. A little word of warning, I did punch my TV a few times. One time so hard I thought I'd broken it. So just be aware that you think you'll stay in your safe zone, but when you start getting attacked, you're going to start flailing. That's just the way it is. And it's a complete game changer as you're moving around in the space, slowly picking up guns and firing them. It still has that spatial puzzle element of planning your movements, but this time it's your entire body, and it's almost balletic. Like it's very smooth and very graceful. And if you ever want to feel like you're in a John Woo slow motion gunfight, then this is absolutely the game for you. And I've just finished it, and the last level, of course, because it's a video game, is like the hardest level where it throws everyone at you from every direction. And of course, the guns are not fired out. They have limited bullets. But with guns and with knives, you can hack bullets out of the air as they come towards you. And it's just wonderful as you've got 5 people around you and you lay off like single shots and throw objects. And I finished the game by running out of bullets and throwing a gun at someone and hitting them in the head. And there's no other medium where you can feel like that kind of satisfaction. That's the moment where you go, oh yeah, video games are cool. Like, there's nothing else where you can do that. And the really nice thing about Superhot when you finish, and it kind of sets you as a player in this very dark, dingy room full of PC equipment, and you put on a VR headset in VR to go into the VR space. And when you finish, it's got a bunch of like floppy disk, 3.5 inch floppy disks, remember those? And they're all labeled for different versions of the game. So there's a speedrun mode, or an unlimited mode, or endless, I should say. And there's headshots only, or hardcore mode. So there's lots and lots of reasons to carry on playing when you finish. And a couple of other levels, particularly the one on the airplane. I love a good, like, air... like, freeing the hostages on a moving aircraft is basically my happy place. There's a mission in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 had Spec Ops, didn't it? And there's a mission in that where you have to storm an airplane and take out all the terrorists and free the hostages. And that's still my favourite Call of Duty level. And there's one in Superhot as well that I've played over and over, like moving up this airplane until finally you shoot people out of the open cargo door. Like, it's just very cool. It's if you like your action movies, like John Woo, like John Wick, like Mission Impossible, and you want to feel like the protagonist in one of these awesome Jason Statham movies where you fire a gun around a lot of people, then you're not going to find a better version of that than Superhot in VR. It's a really incredible game, and it's been really nice actually to play it in so many different forms over the years, and just to see it really just focus on what it does really, really well, and then find its true version in VR. It's incredible. So again, highly recommended. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful week, and next week I'll be back to talk about hopefully a couple of new games that have interested me. So I hope that whatever you're playing, it interests you too. Let me know on Twitter, on the site, what you're playing and what you're into, if you've got any recommendations. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.